Hi, and welcome to Something to Talk About. I'm Linda McNamee, and as you saw from our title, we're going back to school again? Well, anyway, the past year has been a little different, so we're just going to delve into some of the nuances that are going to be taking place in the next couple of weeks. But, as always, before you meet my guest for this evening, I would like to I would like to invite you to email me at any time. If you have a suggestion for a future topic, if you have questions for tonight, you can email me at talk@bcattv.org. I would like to thank the crew for this evening, who also happen to be staff here. John Vias and Chris Flaherty are making sure that the show must go on. So my volunteers have prior commitments, but I still appreciate it when they can come here. And as always, I want to thank my husband Paul for staying home for Daddy Date Night, and hopefully homework's done and everybody can relax. So, housekeeping aside, I would like to introduce my wonderful guest, whom you've met before. We have Dr. Eric Conte, who is the superintendent of schools here, who is ready for a really long vacation, I can imagine.
Wow.
So,
thank you, Linda. It's a pleasure to be here.
thank you for taking time again out of your schedule, because we have some changes going on that normally take place at the end of the summer, but we're kind of taking place right before school vacation.
Yeah, I was meeting with a group of teachers, I think last week, and they said this was like their 7th major change this year.
They're still counting?
Yeah, we've had lots of change, lots of starts, and we're going to be essentially starting a new school year in a few weeks. So we're excited about that, and there's a lot of planning going on.
When has there not been planning this year?
No, again,
I know that's a loaded question.
Well,
but
I think the themes for the year that we started with from the summer when the teachers arrived before the start of school was we asked for flexibility and forgiveness. So we said everyone's going to need to be flexible because many of the situations we found ourselves in, we were in for the first time.
And not too many people have lived through a second global pandemic.
No, that's what I kept telling everyone. This is my first pandemic, so we're trying. And I just think the support staff was here all summer and working incredibly hard. And when the teachers arrived, they also worked incredibly hard. And that's the teachers who were teaching fully remotely, who had to learn new skills and prepare curriculum, and the teachers who were teaching in person. And I just couldn't be prouder of the teachers and support staff across the districts. A lot of times the national dialogue and even some of the state dialogue that's critical talks about people not coming to work or not wanting to come to work. And again, our staff has been here all summer and have been showing up to work, and our teachers have been in classrooms and teaching remotely since September 10th. So people have been present, working hard, learning new skills, and again, I couldn't be prouder of everyone.
So, yeah, I have found that my kids have done amazingly well this year, and I think the teachers have been phenomenal.
Well, I think honestly, we prioritize what they're really good at, and we were never concerned once the students were in front of their teachers or in front of their teachers remotely, because that's their strength. And we really encouraged people. One of our main concerns, let me frame it this way, was when we had to shut down schools in March, last March.
Sad that we have to clarify that.
The relationships had already been established. So I think it was easier for the teachers to connect with their kids because they had already had relationships established.
Right.
One of our main concerns this fall was we were starting sort of brand new routines and remote routines for a lot of kids, even remote lessons for the students who are in school without those relationships established. And so I think that was a big concern, but again, our teachers were amazing at creating those relationships. And even now, a lot of the families whose children are getting their instruction fully remotely have been very complimentary and have not wanted to disrupt the relationships that their children had formed with their classmates and with their teacher. And I think that's a real tribute to the efforts of our, again, remote teachers and a real strength of our in-person teachers.
So I do want to talk about remote learning a little bit, but the element that prompted me to contact you again to appear was those the weekly video messages. What prompted you and your team to start doing those regular messages as opposed to just like a newsletter or anything? And who produces those, by the way?
Oh, yeah, they're produced on an iPhone, and
Okay.
they're produced by Patrick Larkin and myself. Patrick sort of splices them all together, and we call them the cure for insomnia. So if anyone is ever having trouble sleeping, they just pop that on. And no, the production value is terrible. But
Get the message out.
honestly, we started communicating when our buildings were closed again from a year ago last March. We got into the habit of we would connect online at 6:30 in the morning, and we would co-write a message to staff every day.
Okay.
So it was sort of our routine. It was
Oh,
our
man,
sort
you
of
would not want me getting up at 6:30 in the
our
morning.
sort of work day, and we sort of got into a pattern, and sort of at the end we enjoyed the routine, and so we were looking to try to establish a routine communication because we found it more effective. Because even if you don't take the time to read it or you don't like the message, if you come to know that a message is coming, then it sort of is. I think you can reach more people. So we had a lot of information to share. People are very busy. The video came about honestly because we felt it would be more accessible to people in different ways, and we thought we'd just try something different. So that's where it comes up. Where it came up when we tried it, and then you asked sort of where do the topics come from, and they really come from a bunch of different places. And in conversations we have, someone might call and say, "Boy, I'm unclear on this. Can you clarify that?" We had established in the late summer, early fall working groups in different categories prior to the opening of school, and the working group I had established that I was working with had parents, teachers, administrators on it, and we've actually kept that working group going. We meet Thursday nights, and we're still meeting weekly, and I get great feedback from that group about things that messages they've gotten, messages again that are unclear, suggestions. My neighbors are saying, "I'm not really sure about recess, what's happening, so can you focus on recess?" So a bunch of different sources, and we try to keep it to 4 or 5 minutes just because people's attention span, they don't want to listen to us. Again, they'll fall asleep. That's
5 minutes actually is a good chunk of time. You can get a lot of information out in that.
Yeah, and then it also gave us a chance to thank people because so many folks are working so hard. So we really wanted to have the discipline of making sure we ended with a gratitude every week, and because again, a lot of people are, I think, as we started with, just putting in a tremendous amount of time and effort.
So the video message from a couple of weeks ago said that the State Board of Education has decided that even though you had to come up with 3 different scenarios for learning, they were only going to honor in person from this point onward. How did they get to that? Do you know how they got to that decision, and who are they that actually made the decision?
Well, again, I think a lot of this stems from the governor's office and the Mass Department of Public Health, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, the Commissioner of Education. I think that they had all reached the conclusion that they weren't seeing large amounts of school spread. Again, I'm not saying I agree with their conclusion, but they were saying not seeing lots of school spread. They wanted to see schools open more. The figures have changed, I'm sure, but Some of the reporting was there's about 300,000 students across the Commonwealth who have not been back to school at all yet, haven't had an
Wow.
in-person experience from last March. So I think they were really encouraging students to have an in-person experience. They were seeing lots of inequities in learning being exacerbated by the situation.
Okay.
And so I think positive presupposition. I like to think everyone's intentions were positive, so I think they had good intentions. And I think the state Board of Ed essentially supported the commissioner's recommendation to only have in-person learning count towards our time and learning requirements. So
Okay.
again, by eliminating the other two, except as you know, they didn't eliminate full remote. They're allowing full remote to remain in place through the end of this school year.
Okay. Because I was wondering, I'm like, wait a minute, it said fully in person, but we were still keeping remote. So thank you for clarifying that.
Yes.
Now, in that decision-making process, how much, if any, did individual school districts have any say?
Again, we had no say. It was a regulatory change.
Okay.
So they changed the law.
Okay.
And then
I just wasn't sure if they like
yeah.
asked for your input and then took that into consideration, or if it was just like, okay, studies have shown and.
Again, I think they certainly asked input from different stakeholder groups,
Oh,
but we
okay.
don't. Again, this was a state-based regulatory change. So we receive money from the state, and if you want to utilize the state money, then you follow state regulations.
Yeah, kind of like voluntary cooperation with state and local authorities.
Right.
Okay, so you mentioned at the state level there were lots of departments that were working with each other.
Mm-hmm.
For your office, how much interaction have you had with like the school committee or any other, or the Board of Health for Burlington's plan?
Again, we work regularly with the Board of Health, and we have sort of all spring, all summer. I think our most intense conversations were happening before we opened school at all. So I think that's when we came through.
Okay.
The Board of Health generously shared their time, did a tour of our high school. I think they reviewed all of our plans, and I think their expertise was needed and appreciated. And again, we've worked very closely. Positive cases come through the Board of Health. Close contacting comes through the Board of Health. Our nurse leader, Barbara Conley, our school nurses have done a tremendous job this whole year, and they work very closely with Susan Luminello and her staff. Again, couldn't be more complimentary of the work that we've done. The regulatory change and the role of the school committee, I think the school committee is very supportive. I think that they convey values. I think parents communicate to their school committee members. But in terms of the operations of the district, operationalizing those values, again, I'll listen to any good idea, but it really needs to, I think, come from within the district. And
Okay.
again, I think they've been incredibly supportive. I think they always ask, what do you need? They always, again, convey what they're hearing from their constituents, and so that's sort of the role that they're playing. And I know that if we needed anything, we could go to the school committee, and they would be very supportive.
They'd make it happen.
Yep.
Now, you had mentioned that now we're still going to have two different modes of learning. There's full remote and full in person.
Mm-hmm.
And parents were given a survey not too long ago to determine if they wanted to change or if they wanted to stay.
Yep.
And not too many people changed. I think was it like 40 people from remote decided to go to full in school?
Yeah, at the elementary level, we have about 400 students in our remote academy, so we have
Okay.
400 students fully remote, and about 40 of those students are returning to full in-person on April 5th.
Okay.
So,
And how is the in-person going to change? Let's talk about that a little bit, because we're extending the day,
yep.
and what else is going to happen?
Well, again, at the elementary level, our students have been coming into school 5 days a week
Right.
already. So extending the day another couple hours. The vast majority of that time is going to be for lunch and for recess, which the kids are very excited about, and I don't blame them. Again, my two favorite subjects as well. So I think there's a lot of logistics that go in the planning for lunch and for recess, and then the students will have sort of one additional lesson time in the afternoon, whatever that may be.
And like their specials are going from a half an hour to
45 minutes. Because the day is extended, and that helps us have a better special experience, which is very important, and also allows our teachers to have some planning time, which they desperately need during the day as well. So I think it's going to look more like a typical elementary day, but with recognizing that there's still a pandemic and that we still need to practice our precautions, our mask wearing, distancing as much as we can, and hand washing. And so sometimes people are saying, well, the kids are eating snack already, what's the difference with lunch? And it tends to be a longer period of time. It's a maskless activity, and the adults have to eat as well. So we're trying to find opportunities for the kids to eat with 6 feet of social distancing, again in a maskless way, and make sure they have supervision to do it, because we can't. Our cafeterias and gymnasiums are full of lots of classroom furniture, and we're using them as storage right now.
So that was kind of my next question. I know like the middle school, because I have a child in middle school, they have their lunches in the classroom at their own desks. Will that also be the model for the elementary school students at this point?
Yes, and I think that's the plan. As long as we can provide 6 feet of social distancing.
Which is currently happening in the elementary school.
It is, but if we move 40 students back in, there might be some classrooms where that drops below 6 feet, so we're going to have some overflow space for lunch. And so we're working out all those details.
We'll just have to have lunch outside on nice days.
We can have lunch outside on nice days, absolutely. So that's one of the things that we would talk about.
So why is it, I remember teachers saying that pretty much after April vacation, in a normal non-pandemic year, after April vacation, the kids pretty much just check out. With being so close to the end of the year, why do you think it's important, or what was the decision-making process to send the kids back now instead of waiting until September?
Well, again, I'm going to respectfully disagree with your premise. I think some of the learning that happens in April and May and June is incredibly important, and because those relationships are established, I think that's when great learning can happen. So I do think learning at the end of the year is really effective and important. Why now? I can't speak to the Commissioner of Education's intentions, the governor's intentions. I don't like when people speak to my intentions. Right. So I think that they were very concerned about learning loss, is some of the conversations that I've heard. I think they were very concerned about the disparities of learning loss from community to community, especially some of the more needy communities in the Commonwealth, and some of the learners who are often marginalized, I think they were concerned about. I also think that there's an understanding that after a year or a year and a half, a year and a month, that a return is going to be disruptive, and getting some of that disruption over with now may clear the fall to be a smoother return. If we, and again,
so like baby steps,
baby steps, but again, yes, they're not making this decision based on Burlington. They're making this decision based on everybody, and there are many children in the Commonwealth who haven't returned to school at all. So I think that's sort of the framework for their decision making. But so I mean, I think that's as far as I can guess, that's what I would say in the conversations I've been a part of.
Seems plausible. Makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why are the elementary schools being, switching over in the beginning of April, and then the middle schools and probably high school going back at the end of April? Why not just do it all at the same time?
I think a couple reasons, but the primary reason would be middle schoolers and high schoolers tend to act like adults in terms of the virus and spread. So I think they were most confident about returning elementary students back to in-person.
Okay.
I think they were most confident about reducing the social distancing with younger children. And that's really been something that's been discussed since the summertime. They really talked about children age 10 and under don't seem to be carriers or transmitters, and then there's different research all over that, but I think in general they thought the younger the student, the closer they could be, and the less risk there was, which I think is why they wanted to start with elementary school. I also think that elementary school students have a harder time adjusting to remote learning. Again, I think our students and teachers have done a great job.
Okay.
And I also think there's parents have a real challenge working and
multitasking
and being being so directly involved with their child's instruction. So again, I think there's many reasons, but it makes sense for us because our elementary students have already been back 5 days, and I think making that adjustment first for us makes sense.
And I vaguely remember conversations from like last August where the middle school and high school just didn't have this, at least in Burlington, didn't have the space available to maintain that 6 feet of social distance, so, which is why they have cohort A and cohort B. So they're going to have to reduce the distances in order to fit everybody again, I'm guessing.
Yep, correct. So the state has changed their guidance, and they essentially have said their guidance has always been 3 feet, but I think they encourage to get as close to 6 feet as possible.
Right.
But
well, again, a year ago we didn't know.
Right. So our knowledge has changed, but now they're really saying anything over 3 feet is okay. The CDC just last week changed their guidance to 3 feet as well, with some caveats. Again, they're saying for older kids, if there are communities that have really high rates of positivity, then they want us to treat high schoolers like adults. So I think they're saying 3 feet is okay unless you have an outbreak in your community. And again, you're going to ask me to define what an outbreak is, and I don't know. We would work with the Board of Health to help us make those decisions if we, again, reluctantly have to make those decisions.
Right. Well, speaking of outbreak, I won't ask you about an outbreak. However, we had conversations earlier, like back in August and September, about what happens if there's a spike in cases. And I know there have been occasions where a classroom goes into quarantine if someone has been affected, or like a cohort in the middle school has gone remote for the same reason. Will the same practices or the same decision-making processes be in place with the full in-person, or what is the decision-making process to determine whether or not people have to go back to remote?
Again, a lot of the protocols will stay the same. So if there's a positive case in a classroom at the elementary school, again, confirmed through the Board of Health, then that classroom will go remote for, the entire classroom will go remote for, I think, a 10-day period of time. And the one change may be that if there's a fully vaccinated teacher in the classroom, then that teacher wouldn't be considered a close contact. I don't believe. We're still sort of working through all that. But again, if the entire class is remote, then the teacher would be teaching remotely regardless of whether she was quarantined or not. At the middle and high school, if we're combining cohorts and the social distancing gets condensed, which it will, then I think we would be identifying more close contacts and having more students quarantined based on if we come across a positive. So with more students in the buildings, it may be that we have more students quarantined.
Okay, well, that does make sense if you follow that logic. So teachers are getting vaccinated right now, is my understanding.
Yes.
So they are in one of the acceptable groups.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are teachers taking advantage of this that you know of?
Oh, absolutely. And I think there's been wonderful examples of collaboration where teachers are helping their colleagues sign up to get appointments. If one teacher's teaching and another has a free period, they're trying to get online to help their colleague. You'll see the emails go around, I have a spot, if anyone needs a spot. Even some of our parents in our PTO groups have contacted teachers to help them find vaccination spots.
Okay.
So again, in the crisis, I think we've seen a lot of generosity of spirit, and that's been great to see. Again, my perspective is it's kind of unnecessary. I wish we could have gotten the vaccines locally and administered them to our educators and staff here. I think it would have been much more efficient, and we wouldn't have teachers running all over the place and competing for spots, and
Going down to Plymouth
and
Gillette.
missing time. But again, I think our teachers are really actively trying to get vaccinated. We're working with the teachers union to try to get some information about how many, and I think we're getting close to 50% of our staff that are vaccinated or have received one dose or are scheduled for their first dose. So I think we're making progress.
Aren't we all?
Yes.
Hopefully. So you had mentioned, I think I remember correctly, you said 40 full remote students are coming, roughly 40 are coming back to be full-time in person.
At the elementary level.
At the elementary level.
Mm-hmm.
Did I remember hearing or that some of the schedules themselves will be shifted around? Or are we keeping all the schedules the same and class assignments? It just seems to me,
Well, again, the 40 students are essentially coming into the buildings for the first time. So they need to be placed.
But they're across 4 schools.
Across 4 schools, across 5 grades in each of the schools.
Okay.
So they're all spread out. So say Francis Wyman has 17 new students coming into school. Mrs. McDonald will get the list of students. She needs to place them into homerooms. So again, maybe 2 students in 2nd grade will get placed in the homeroom.
Okay.
We need to contact the parents if that impacts the spacing below 6 feet. We need to tell the educators who are going to be in the classroom that it's going to be 4.5 feet of spacing or 5 feet of spacing.
Okay.
Just to follow our agreements with everyone that are in place, and then the teachers will need to greet those students, incorporate them into their class, and it's going to be a restart to the school year. Class sizes are obviously going to bump up a little bit, and the students who are leaving the remote class is going to get smaller. But we decided not to make any changes to the remote schedule or to the remote classrooms because we were trying to create as much stability as we
need
can,
that continuity.
and then get through the end of the year. So that's really what we're trying to do at the elementary level. So those students are being placed currently. I think those letters will be going out this week or early next week, and then
Soon.
The students will be arriving again a week from Monday, so on April 5th. So that's that's where we are.
All right.
Typically a start of the school year again is exciting, and there's going to be some excitement here. We've created, we've had supplies and materials that we've put in individual cases for the students because we really didn't want them sharing materials. Again, remember when school started, we were worried about transmission over surfaces much more when they are now. So we have to make sure the new students coming in have supplies and materials. And again, there's going to be some disruption some disruption to the start of the school year. Young kids are very adaptable, and I think they'll adjust and they'll be happy. And again, our teachers are pros, so they'll handle it. A question that you asked, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to ask the questions and answer them, is why not expand the bus capacity, because we're allowed to do that. And I appreciate that. But with all the changes that I just mentioned, what we are trying to do is keep the arrival procedures and the dismissal procedures consistent, at least for a couple weeks, and then we'll look at bus routes and expanding bus capacity after April break. So we just wanted to get the kids into their new routine and not make a whole bunch of adjustments, and give the principals, honestly, a little bit of breathing room to get the schedules done, get the students placed, get the new routines in, get lunches distributed.
There's more.
And then recess is, again, kids play naturally, but sort of getting into the routine, following the rules of recess, doing it safely.
Recesses still require masks even though they're outside?
Outside they require masks, but we'll have areas where they can take a mask break. But when they are without a mask, they need to remain 6 feet apart. And kids sort of naturally gravitate towards one another, so if their masks are off, we're going to want to make sure that they're supervised. And so there'll be times for them to take off their masks and have mask breaks. And again, as the weather improves, everything gets better in terms of virus mitigation. So we can have more windows open, we can have more airflow, we can have lower CO2 levels, we can have more time outside. All of that stuff gets better for us, and so I think that's, the weather's working in our favor, but again, we were trying to minimize some of the changes to, again, allow a little bit of breathing room to have new routines learned, and then we'll try to expand bus service after that.
So the bus capacity will at some point be allowed, because before it was like assigned seats and it was, staggering and
And technically we're still supposed to have assigned seats, but if there's a full bus of kids, it's going to be much more difficult for us to maintain the seating charts and the assigned seats. And so just like with schools, if there's some positive cases on the bus, we may have, if there are more kids on the bus, we may have more kids quarantining. So that's the...
Especially with all the grades and all the different classrooms.
Correct. So that's always the dilemma.
Now kindergarten is changing.
Yes, it is.
Kindergarten is going to full day. I'm guessing it's because of the whole transportation thing. It's just a lot easier. And the kindergartners also get to do the specials now. They'll get art and music and gym class, which normally doesn't take place until first grade.
Yeah, we're going to try to provide specials when we can. There might be some exceptions to that, Linda, but I'm saying I think that's the intention. The way the elementary principals have described it to me is, and the reason we are doing it is because of transportation. So I'd say I'm sort of making the decision to extend kindergarten. I think the principals are saying, boy, we'd really like to do this thoughtfully. We can't do it thoughtfully in 2 weeks. So they're going to put something together, and then the commitment is to get through the school year, communicate with some of our incoming kindergarten parents, our kindergarten staff, and bring people together and do a much more thoughtful job of developing a full-day curriculum if people want to maintain the full-day K. So we're going to have some hiccups, I guarantee that, but this is sort of a forced change for the end of the school year, and we'll do it much more thoughtfully during the summer. And even if we maintain the extended K next year, the intention is to, again, slow down the pace of learning, allow a little bit more time in transition, not have the kindergartners feel so rushed through the curriculum, and allow more time for some structured play, which is really important at that age. So it's not. I think there'll be some opportunities, but we have to have more conversation.
Yeah, because I was wondering, if this would carry over into future years and if this is a direction that Burlington wants to take, because I think just a few years ago, Billerica went to a full day of kindergarten as well, and I'm not sure about the other communities, but it hasn't been decided yet.
Again, not officially for the fall.
Okay.
I'm saying let's see how the spring goes, and we'll ask, and we have more curriculum work to do before that becomes a reality.
Okay.
And our kindergarten students have been going home on the same bus with the 1st through 5th graders all year. I think I think
They're
it's doable,
big kids now.
and I think having a day that matches grades 1 through 5 is not that novel an idea. Most of the kindergarten programs around are that length of time.
How will after-school programs be impacted as of April 5th?
We're not changing them. It's one of those things, again, trying to keep everything the same, and for a couple reasons.
Okay.
Is we know there are some families that need the after-school care till 6. We're sticking with 4 because we're asking the after-school program to help us manage, supervise lunch and recess times, because there'll be more kids there. Again,
but right now, after school starts.
Correct.
After school,
Right.
So
the district will pick up that cost. We're not going to charge
Right.
parents for that time when the schools are open. But I think
I was just thinking more of staffing. The staff schedules aren't going to change. They're just going to shift.
correct. So we're going to have more overlap between the
Okay.
after-school program and the classroom teachers.
Okay.
And again, maybe a little bit too granular a comment, but we normally have more adults in the building capable of helping with duties like supervising.
Mm-hmm.
All of those people are managing their own classrooms,
Okay.
either in person or remotely, because we had to create a whole nother elementary school in the fall.
Right.
So we really need supervisory help, and so we're asking the after-school folks to do that. Again, if we get through 2 weeks and we figure this out and we think we can shift
Okay.
the after-school program, we can make that shift happen.
Oh,
But I think we're trying to minimize changes, open the schools, return everyone in full,
okay.
and then get the routine started, and then prepare for opening the middle and high school, which is going to happen on Monday, April 26th.
6th. Okay. I'm almost afraid to bring this up, but standardized tests in Mcas. My impression has been there's always been a debate about standardized testing and the value of standardized testing, because we are still in the middle of a pandemic. What is the current status of Mcas?
Current status is I had a meeting again, I think it was Tuesday, yesterday.
I don't even know what day it is
It
today.
was
so I'm
yesterday
like,
with the commissioner, and he said the conversations are ongoing. So the state has delayed the implementation of Mcas because I think they rightly decided they didn't want students to start back to full days and then their second day back
have a test.
So I think they made that smart decision. They also have been discussing changing the purpose of Mcas to shift it away from accountability to more of a diagnostic tool. We're arguing with the state that we have better diagnostic tools in use in the district. Please let us use. You can mandate that a diagnostic be given. And any district that wants to use Mcas as their diagnostic should be able to. But if we have a better diagnostic that we're used to using and that we have historical information on, we feel like we should be able to use our own diagnostic. But again, I'm not sure they're going to listen to me in this particular case. I do think there is some momentum.
Just because you have experience.
There is some momentum to moving the Mcas to the fall and starting the year that way. But state testing is linked to federal regulation, federal law,
Okay.
linked to federal dollars. So it would really require a federal waiver that
Okay.
then the state would need to act on that federal waiver, and that hasn't occurred. So as of now, MCAS is still a reality, but they
Okay.
haven't yet told us when.
Now, I'm still, my parent brain is still stuck in elementary school.
Uh-huh.
Is MCAS required for graduation?
It's
And
yes.
how does that impact this year's seniors?
Well, again, this year's seniors.
Will there be like a waiver or?
The state requirements for graduation are typically over for most students, certainly most students in Burlington after 10th grade.
Oh, okay.
So
See, I told you I'm still stuck in elementary.
right, so
brain.
they would be ready to graduate. Any student who still needs to pass MCAS to earn a high school diploma after 10th grade would then have several times, 11th grade, 12th grade,
Okay.
to retake the test until they pass it. So I believe all of our students are graduation eligible according to MCAS at this
okay.
time. So the only real high stakes year for MCAS are sort of the high school 9th and 10th grade tests that you need for
Okay.
graduation. Grades 3 through 8, again, students take MCAS, but again, there's
So there'll still just be,
No
plenty of
requirements.
time to make up between now and, high school. So like the 3rd and 4th graders this year don't really have to worry that much or be concerned because they'll be retested.
Yeah, I never think they
Okay.
should worry about testing anyway. So I mean,
Everybody worries about tests.
But I'm saying
They're
I think
tests.
I think they'll be fine, and again, our graduation rate is exceptional. So I think by the time our students get to high school, they're prepared to pass the state requirements.
Although speaking of testing, what about finals? I don't even know what happened last year for.
No, I think the high school modified the experience. I think
Okay.
they modified sort of the midterm. I think Mr. Sullivan, Mark, and the instructional leadership team, department heads of the high school, the staff at the high school, I think they're taking a very student-centered approach. So they'll do what's best. Again, I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I'm assuming they'll create a process that's in the students' best interest, and they'll work something out.
Just like reinventing yet another area of academia,
Yeah.
it seems.
And then they'll make adjustments. And I think, again, the teachers have been adjusting all
Oh,
year.
man, those
So
poor teachers.
so I think they'll continue to make adjustments. And just to reassure people, the diagnostics that we do use show that our students are growing and learning. They're growing and learning. So is that growth going to look exactly like a more typical year that we've had? The answer is no, but it's really not that far behind. We're very close. So this idea that our kids have missed a year of instruction or missed a year of learning, that's not the narrative in Burlington. And I know people are sort of professing that elsewhere, but our kids are growing and learning, and they will recover, and they'll recover quickly. And so I have every confidence in that.
Well, they're also learning a totally different set of skills as well. They're learning academically, but they're also learning, a crash course in time management.
Yeah.
And yeah, I won't even go into that. Do you have any idea what graduation's going to look like this year?
We just got the guidelines last Friday, and so they're allowing outdoor events.
Okay.
Mr. Sullivan has the guidelines. He's working with his team, and I'm sure he'll put together a graduation plan that follows the guidelines and honors this senior class, which deserves to be honored, and especially, and I think they've really conducted themselves well. So the plans right now are that it is on time. So what's the first Sunday in June, and we're going to keep it on time.
Still
And
going to happen.
I'm sure Mr. Sullivan will be conveying the details soon. I think it's a topic of interest
To a lot of people.
to a lot of people.
So with everything that has happened over the past 12, 13 months that started out as just 2 weeks. What are the lessons, not necessarily the lessons learned, but what do you see as being sustainable or being able to be carried over for September 2021?
I think one of the pleasant surprises is the flexibility that people have demonstrated, and I think I've really noticed a much higher level of collaboration and support, and so I'd like to see that continue into the fall. I'll even say, in terms of with my colleagues across the Middlesex League 12, the 12 communities surrounding us, we meet regularly. We have this year. We've really supported one another. We've shared ideas. We've learned from each other, and I think it's been something that I hope continues on as well. I think a lot of teachers have learned new skills in terms of remote teaching, and I'm not sure when that tool will be appropriate out of their tool belt again, but I think many people have expanded their tool belts in terms of their job.
They're all like Batman now.
They're like Batman now, and I think that's the case. And again, I think it's reaffirmed my belief that learning really starts from relationships, and I think our educators have done a phenomenal job really establishing relationships, making students feel safe. We're sitting here in near April and talking about school being open like we're taking that for granted. And when we first opened, people were very nervous, and
some people still are really nervous.
And rightly so, justifiably so. But if you had asked me in September, I would have said I thought we would be closed in October. I mean, we didn't know. And
I actually do remember some of those theories.
So I just think that the resilience everyone has demonstrated, I also hope continues. So.
Well, we do still have some time left. So I'm wondering, I know when you first came to BCAT this evening, you're like, this is going to take a lot longer. So are there any topics that we didn't give them justice?
I just want to maybe spend some time on the middle school and high school, because we've talked mostly about the elementary school.
That's true, we have.
So Ms. Purchase at the middle school has surveyed her parents.
Okay.
She's has the results of which students want to return back to full-time.
Okay.
The challenge at the middle school and the high school is a little bit different in terms of scheduling, because we're not just adding afternoons, we're combining cohorts. And the state regulation is elementary students need to get 5 hours, 5 days a week of in-person instruction.
Okay.
And at the secondary level, middle and high, students need to get 5.5 hours, 5 days a week of in-person instruction.
Okay.
So Ms. Purchase and Mr. Sullivan are having to redesign schedules, and the middle school schedule will largely stay the same, but the cohorts will be combined. There might be some slight tweaks to that.
But the teams, at least in the middle school, remain the same.
Teams will stay the same, but homerooms may shift, and so who you go to special with may shift. So there is going to be some communication and some changes that are happening, but I think Ms. Purchase and her team are trying to keep the schedules as similar as they have been for all students. There's going to be the logistics of having twice as many students in the building, so a lot of the hallways now are one way. The stairwells are one way.
I'm just thinking of the pickup line at the middle school. It just like wraps around the entire school.
So they've had to develop another procedure for pickup and drop off. So they're going to have to retrain parents. And I think I've heard some shout outs and some thank yous to the Burlington Police Department. I think they've been really helping us with the drop off and pickup. Obviously, with limited bus capacity, we're having more parent drivers, so there's more car traffic. We are looking to expand capacity and redo the bus routes at the middle and high school level.
The routes themselves, or just the capacity on the buses?
Well, the bus stops drive the routes. So, and remember, we're only
Okay, I'm thinking like, okay. going.
So we're the changes are we're probably going to go back to more of a model like from last year
Okay.
when we were open fully, because we're not transporting just cohort A on Monday and Tuesday and just cohort B on Thursday and Friday. We're transporting
You're going to have twice as many kids.
twice as many kids, and some of the we might need to add stops if
Okay.
because of cohort A and cohort B. So the bus company is working on that, and then just like at the start of the year, we're going to need to assign or reassign in some cases students to school buses and stops.
Okay.
And then you've experienced it yourself. The first 2 weeks of every school year, again, we do, I think,
I'm just
very
thinking
well.
of the line at the middle
but when we
school,
go sort of theory to practice, there's always some adjustments
Right.
to the buses. So we'll do that. The high school schedule, the team is really looking at the high school worked for a couple years on a new schedule that has longer periods. And
Is that when we shifted to the later start time?
it was actually the year after, and the high school
Okay.
had been working on that schedule for a couple years. They didn't get to implement it this year because of the pandemic, but they were looking for longer periods and not, so instead of 7 classes meeting a day, 5 classes meeting a day.
Oh, wow.
So the instructional time stays the same over a period of time, but the idea is to slow the pace down a little bit and
Okay.
reduce some of the student stress associated with it. So instead of preparing for 7 classes in a day,
Okay.
you can prepare for 5 again, but the classes are meeting for longer periods of
Longer
time.
periods.
So
Okay.
it's a modified block. So I think Mark is looking at implementing a version of that schedule starting
With the fall?
April 26th.
Oh, starting in April 26th.
Yeah,
Oh,
because
wow.
remember, he's going to go back to 5.5 hours,
Okay.
5 full days a week. The high school is not part of the state mandate at this time,
Okay.
but the commissioner has told us we need to be ready to meet that requirement with 2 weeks' notice. So he's planning on making that announcement in April. So
Okay.
we are working and planning and intending on having the high school go back to full-time at the same time as the middle school.
Okay.
And because we're assuming the commissioner is going to make that announcement
Okay.
in the beginning of April.
But if the commissioner happens to put it a later date, are we still going to stick with the 26th?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it just makes sense to do them both at the
does.
same time, and then with the bus routes and the
Okay.
dismissal times, I think.
I was just thinking it was the same bus routes, the same traffic patterns, just with fewer students, but they've actually had to restructure which streets the buses went down.
Right, because
Okay.
normally we transport everybody, and we had to create a
Oh, that's right, the
1.4
radius.
mile radius where we ask people to walk. So if we take away the radius, then we're going to create more stops and readjust. So
Okay.
again, it's like opening school again. So that's what we're
It
doing.
basically is, and you had to reinvent it last March, then reinvent it again in September, and now reinvent it now.
So again, I'll
I'm
and we're
surprised your brain's
no,
not.
and where I started, we have amazing people, amazing educators, amazing staff, and they've been really working hard and trying to do the best for their students, and that's what they always do. So
They always do.
this situation shouldn't be any different. But I think if parents have questions or concerns, because there's a lot of information and a lot of change, I think the best source is to their school first.
Okay.
And then they'll have the most accurate information for their child's particular situation. And I've been seeing the communication that's coming out from the school buildings. I believe it's thorough, and I'm hoping parents are getting enough information. We're sharing enough information with everybody.
So one thing, thinking about all the information, it is not information overload this time. But back in September, there was a lot of transition, and like every day, new information was being uncovered. Is that the same now, or are we pretty much set on where we need to be and we just have to figure out how to get there? So we're not aiming at a moving target anymore.
I think we know a lot more than we did in the fall, and part of the challenge with the late summer and the fall was the guidance was changing every couple days, and we
Right.
would have to make adjustments. We're not seeing that rapid pace of change.
Okay.
We are seeing more guidance coming out. You know, the 6 feet to 3 feet, those type of changes. But it seems to me like the changes are only getting more permissive, not more restrictive.
Okay.
And again, with the better weather, that helps us as well. So some people would say they're getting too permissive. They're forgetting we have a pandemic.
Yeah.
Some
Only spring break down in Florida.
some think we're shouldn't be having any restrictions at all. So that's the dilemma. But we want to provide a safe environment for students and all the adults, teachers and staff in our buildings, and we feel like that we've done that so far, and we'll continue to do that.
Any other lessons learned?
Boy.
In 2 minutes or less.
No, I just the collaboration I think was critical. I think the admiration I have of the leadership and my staff has just grown. I think the support of the community has never been demonstrated to a greater extent, and I hope the appreciation for public education and the role public education has not only in our children's lives and the importance in our children's lives, but in the importance of the fabric of a community and having communities function and economies function and everything else. So I hope there's a revitalization of that the moral contract that really I think has shaped public schools and you know made them so integral to developing healthy communities. So
I like that answer, but I did think of one more question.
sure.
One more question. I know it's kind of hard to think about this because it's going to be 70 degrees tomorrow.
Right.
But now that we've figured out, you have figured out remote learning, how will snow days be approached in the future?
We don't know the answer to that. So the commissioner, the State Board of Ed did not allow remote learning prior to the pandemic. They obviously had to allow remote learning during the pandemic. Really hard for them to say it's not possible now that we've had a year of it. But they promised a new guidance over the summer in terms of whether they'll allow remote learning moving forward, either on an individual basis like for snow, or even on a more permanent basis if school districts have to continue to provide a remote experience for those families who want it. And of course that would change our staffing, and that's a whole other issue, but we'll get there. So we'll wait for guidance over the summer, and then we'll move forward.
You know, my kids still love their snow days, but I know a couple of years ago we talked about the possibility of blizzard bags and you know, not 27 days of snow days, but you know, okay.
Again, hard to argue it can't be effective when we've done it effectively for
exactly
for 6 months.
So we are out of time.
Okay.
So thank you so much for joining me. You're probably getting really tired of talking about the whole remote thing, but I do appreciate you coming on and sharing with my audience, you know, all the nuances and details. So thank you.
It's my pleasure.
And I hope you are able to enjoy your April vacation. And I also want to thank everyone for tuning in at home. I hope you have found our conversation tonight as enlightening and inspiring and as hopeful as I have. So thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you around town. Good night.